Another diversity program, huh? We asked for a technician, not another black janitor. Master Sergeant Rick Thompson's voice dripped with sarcasm, slicing through the tense air of the hangar, his cold eyes fixed on the woman who had just entered, as if she were some strange creature. A soft snicker rippled through the nearby group of junior airmen, especially Airman Tyler Harris, ever eager to curry favor by joining in the meanest jokes. Tyler leaned over and whispered loud enough for her to hear. They must have sent someone from housekeeping by mistake. I wonder if she knows how to do anything besides mop floors. The laughter spread like a small wave, every gaze flicking toward the black woman with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. She was Dr. Alicia Morgan, petite but muscular, her black hair neatly tied back, clad in a simple blue coverall with no insignia or rank. Her face was unnervingly calm, her dark eyes devoid of expression as she stared unblinkingly at the man who had insulted her. Alicia said nothing. She stood perfectly still, her serenity a stark contrast to the mocking atmosphere around her. No one could read her thoughts, and no trace of anger or hurt flickered across her face. Rick Thompson took a menacing step forward, folding his arms defiantly, and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Listen up, sweetheart. If you've ended up in the wrong place, just say so. We're not short on floor cleaners, but we are short on people who actually do real work." His biting words seemed to squeeze the vast hangar, and his buddies erupted in laughter, egging him on. But Alicia remained unmoved, her eyes slowly scanning the sneerers in front of her with a calm, almost challenging gaze. Finally, she spoke, her tone so measured and quiet it was almost drowned out by the residual laughter. "Sergeant, I'm here on direct orders to address a critical technical issue. If you'd like me to mop the floor first, I will." Her words cut through the snickering, and an awkward silence held for a few seconds, until Rick's smirk returned. He turned to Tyler Harris and sneered, "Airman Harris, give her the mop. Let's see how good our expert really is." Tyler strode forward with a mocking grin, his voice laced with derision. "Here's your tool, ma'am. Hope it's not too complicated." The laughter resumed, but Alicia took the mop without flinching. Her fingers closed around the wooden handle with surprising precision and confidence. Even holding a mop, she radiated something unmistakably different. Watching from a distance, Colonel James Mitchell, an experienced officer overseeing preparations for a critical mission, noted her every movement. He squinted, studying her posture and the way she steadied herself. She stood balanced, poised, as if rigorously trained. Something about her unsettled him, as though he were witnessing a seasoned soldier enduring insult without reacting. Meanwhile, Rick turned on his heel and tossed over his shoulder, "If you want to prove anything, make that floor shine. It's probably the only skill you've got." Tyler and the other young airmen howled, their laughter echoing under Alicia's steps as she began to clean. But she never wavered. Her eyes locked on the huge steel door housing the top-secret security system in need of repair, as if weighing something critical. Each stroke of her mop was exact and efficient, with no wasted motion. Colonel Mitchell continued watching, his instincts telling him that this woman was no ordinary janitor. He muttered under his breath, just loud enough for himself, "There's something very different about her. She's not just a cleaner." From behind them, Tyler whispered to a colleague in scornful tones tinged with doubt. What is she really here to do? Command must have messed up sending her. None of them noticed the discreet black cobra tattoo, her black viper insignia, hidden under Alicia's coverall sleeve. A symbol that spoke of a special identity and hinted at the secrets poised to upend the entire base. Dr. Alicia Morgan's story had only just begun, and those who laughed at her were about to learn a lifelong lesson about prejudice and true competence. The last streaks of mop water had just dried beneath Alicia's feet when a shrill alarm cut through the hangar from deep inside the base. Red lights began flashing in rapid succession, reflecting off the shocked faces of every airman. In an instant, the tense atmosphere swallowed up the mocking laughter that had just echoed through the bay. Master Sergeant Rick Thompson's brow furrowed as he strode over to Airman Tyler Harris. Rick's smug arrogance had vanished, replaced by a scowl laced with unease. "Airman Harris, what the hell is going on?" Rick almost barked, his voice tinged with impatience and anger. Tyler glanced frantically at his handheld console, lines of error codes scrolling across the screen. "Sergeant, the M-lock system has completely failed. We tried rebooting, but it won't respond. All weapons and mission gear are locked down in the armory." Rick ground his teeth and slammed a fist into his palm. Lock was the top. Secret security system, upgraded just weeks ago to safeguard millions of dollars worth of critical military hardware. Hardware needed for a covert operation launching in mere hours. If he couldn't resolve this, the mission would be delayed, with severe consequences for the entire base, and for Rick's career. He glared at his engineering team, men who prided themselves on being the best of the best. But now they stood around the control console like rookies facing their first crisis, confusion written all over their faces. "Tyler, bring me the tablet now. Run every emergency override script we have. Move." Rick's command crackled with pressure. Tyler's hands shook as he keyed commands into the system. Each failed attempt was met with a frustrated shake of his head. Rick's usual calm had evaporated. He scanned the room, desperate for someone, anyone, to steady the storm brewing inside him. But all he saw were helpless expressions and furrowed brows. A noise at the main hangar door drew Rick's attention. Colonel James Mitchell appeared in the frame, his posture commanding as he strode forward. His gaze swept over the chaos, then locked meaningfully on Rick. "Master Sergeant Thompson," Colonel Mitchell said coolly. "Status report. We cannot afford to delay this mission." Rick swallowed down rising panic, forcing himself to sound composed. "Sir, we're working on it. The lock system has a critical fault, but we're troubleshooting." Mitchell cut him off with a cold look. "You've been saying that for over an hour. I need results, not excuses." The weight in the hangar grew heavier still. Mitchell's words were a knife to Rick's pride. In Rick's mind flashed the image of Alicia Morgan, the very woman he'd just insulted and made to mop the floor. He ground his teeth, bitterness echoing in his head. They really think she can fix this? She's just some diversity hire. Unconsciously, Rick's gaze flicked to Alicia. She stood quietly to the side, watching with serene composure. Her eyes showed no surprise or panic. If anything, her calm only intensified Rick's discomfort. Mitchell noticed Rick's stare and, almost reading his thoughts, asked sharply, "Who is that woman, Sergeant Thompson? Why isn't she with the tech team?" Rick hesitated, irritation creeping into his tone. "She's a specialist the command sent over, but I'm afraid it's just another diversity program mistake. Clearly, she's just a janitor." Mitchell's eyes narrowed icily. "I don't care about your personal opinions, Thompson. If she was sent here, there's a reason. Let her try." Rick bit his lip, wounded pride twisting inside him. He couldn't believe the colonel was publicly overruling him like this. His eyes burned with a mix of anger and shame as he replied grudgingly, "Yes, sir." Rick turned back to Alicia and called out, his voice dripping with contempt and challenge. "Hey, specialist, that mop doesn't look too complicated for you. Your turn to show what you can do. Hope you've got more skills than just cleaning floors." All eyes shifted to Alicia. She didn't flinch. Her cold gaze met Rick's, silent and proud. None of them realized that, in that hush, Alicia Morgan was already formulating a plan. One that would not only fix the crisis, but teach her doubters a lesson they would never forget. Alicia's calm gaze swept over Rick, and suddenly the hangar turned ice, cold. The silence stretched heavy, like dust settling into thick layers that clung to everyone present. Colonel James Mitchell, his face as hard as steel, fixed Rick with such a stern glare that the sergeant swallowed hard. Mitchell stepped closer, his voice resonant with authority, each word a pointed challenge. "Sergeant Thompson, do you have a problem with this woman? It seems to me you're dismissing her presence." Rick jolted, his face flushing with a mix of anger and shame. He fought to steady his voice, but his reluctance showed. "Sir, I'm just concerned about the actual capability of the person the command sent us. This system is far too complex. We need someone with combat-tested experience, not—" Mitchell cut him off, his tone icy and razor, sharp. "Not someone like what, Sergeant? A black woman?" The hangar felt as if it froze in that moment. Mitchell's blunt question drew every eye to Rick. Tension crackled in the air. Tyler and the other junior airmen hung their heads, as though shirking guilt for the cruelty they'd just joined in. Rick realized he'd stepped over a dangerous line, one he'd long felt entitled to ignore. Yet, facing an officer of Mitchell's stature, his confidence began to crumble. He forced himself to speak, choosing each word grudgingly. I didn't mean it like that, sir. I just thought we couldn't risk a mission this critical on someone unproven. We need someone truly qualified." Mitchell's gaze never softened. He shifted his eyes to Alicia, still standing composed, radiating control, and spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Dr. Morgan, do you have the confidence to handle this issue?" Alicia took a step forward, her expression serene, as if nothing had occurred. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "Yes, sir, I am fully capable of resolving this." Rick's brow furrowed with rage. He didn't want to accept it, but with Mitchell watching, he could do nothing but swallow his resentment. "If that's your orders, sir, I'll let her try." Tyler muttered under his breath, loud enough for Rick. "This is insane. What are we doing?" Rick shot him a warning look, but inwardly he felt the same. He'd grown used to absolute control, and now everything he commanded seemed to slip away because of someone he'd dismissed as worthless. Alicia approached the M-lock control console, her fingers gliding lightly over the cold steel of the door. All eyes in the hangar tracked her every move, and a knot of unease settled in Rick's gut as he realized everyone, even Tyler, was watching her with a blend of doubt and curiosity. Silently, Rick stepped back, crossing his arms defensively. His features tightened like a drawn bowstring, anger and insecurity simmering beneath the surface. In his mind, he thought bitterly, "This diversity policy is weakening us. If this mission fails, she, and those who put her here, will pay." Colonel Mitchell stood firm, observing both Rick and Alicia with calculated calm. A battle, hardened veteran, he assessed far more than words or appearances. His instincts told him Rick's objections went deeper than mere concern for competence. They revealed prejudice. Rick glared at Alicia from behind his crossed arms, lips pressed tight. A question tormented him. Does she really think she can succeed? The air in the hangar thickened, every second stretching taut as everyone waited for what would happen next, something that could change everything. Rick knew that whatever unfolded, his pride and reputation were already scarred. Amid this peak tension, Alicia's hand rested assuredly on the cold steel, her silent authority signaling the storm about to break. And Rick, with all his arrogance and bias, was about to face something he'd never imagined. Alicia's fingertips traced gently across the cold steel surface, her silence a silent force that seemed to fill the entire hangar. No words, no unnecessary expressions, just an almost uncanny patience on her composed face. Farther away, Master Sergeant Rick Thompson stood with his arms crossed, brow furrowed and eyes filled with unease. He couldn't understand how a woman he'd so easily dismissed as a trivial joke could command the attention of everyone in the bay simply by remaining silent. It was a scenario Rick had never faced, and it threatened his pride deeply. Beside Rick, Tyler Harris still struggled to let go of his mocking attitude, but now his voice carried a hint of genuine doubt and anxiety. Tyler leaned in just enough for the group to hear. "Is she really planning to open that door by petting it? I don't even know what we're watching anymore." Mocking laughs erupted from the nearby airmen, but they sounded forced and reluctant. Even unconsciously, they couldn't deny that Alicia's unnervingly calm demeanor made them feel something was off, something they couldn't yet explain. All the while, Colonel Mitchell stood watching, his sharp gaze never leaving Alicia's every movement. With his extensive combat experience, he could instantly distinguish between ordinary calmness and the unshakable poise of someone who'd endured the harshest pressures. He thought to himself that this woman was clearly far more complex than Rick and the others assumed. He turned to Rick and saw the poorly masked fury on the sergeant's face. Mitchell realized Rick's discomfort stemmed more from wounded pride than from any real concern over performance. He sighed inwardly, recognizing one of the military's most dangerous flaws: a leader letting ego and prejudice cloud judgment. Alicia continued her work in silence, every motion smooth, precise. Nothing extra, nothing lacking. Even while mopping the floor, a task completely unrelated to her real mission, she maintained astonishing professionalism. Her focus wasn't a show to prove something. It was the focus of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. The more Tyler watched Alicia, the more unease crept into his mind. The initial laughter faded away entirely. He realized he wasn't alone. The others around him shared the same feeling, as though witnessing something that far exceeded their understanding. Tyler leaned toward the airman next to him, voice lowered and cautious. "Do you feel like something's not right about her? I've never seen anyone so eerily calm." The other airman nodded, eyes fixed on Alicia in bewilderment. What Tyler said matched everyone's unspoken sense. For the first time since arriving here, they realized they had badly underestimated the black woman standing before them. Even from across the room, Rick could sense the shift in his team's attitude, and it made him angrier. He refused to accept that someone like Alicia, a stranger he'd initially scorned as useless, could shake the confidence of the very team he commanded. He stepped forward, deliberately raising his voice so Alicia and everyone else could hear. "I really don't think we have time for this silent act, Morgan. If you can't do the job, you'd better say so now." Alicia paused for a moment, meeting Rick's gaze with an icy serenity, then spoke calmly and decisively. "I know what I'm doing, Sergeant Thompson." Those few words hit Rick's pride like a splash of ice water. He ground his teeth and clenched his fist to restrain his rising fury. He'd never encountered anyone bold enough to answer him on equal footing, especially not a woman he'd dismissed as weak and incompetent. Mitchell watched Rick's reaction and shook his head slightly. He knew he needed to step in before tension spiraled out of control. But just as he prepared to speak, Alicia turned toward the locked door, and her gesture fell like a hush over the hangar. It wasn't surrender or concession. It was a quiet declaration of power, signaling that she was ready for the next move. The move that would shatter every preconception they held about her. Rick stood frozen, an unmistakable sense of dread creeping into his mind. He realized this might be the moment he had to face the truth. Alicia Morgan was no ordinary woman, and her silence was not a sign of weakness but the true strength he'd never encountered in his entire military career. In the moment Alicia pivoted to face the massive steel door, every eye in the hangar was fixed on her. The air seemed to freeze, and time itself slowed by a heartbeat. The earlier laughter and taunts vanished, replaced by a curious electric tension they couldn't explain. Rick's brow furrowed as he studied Alicia's every move, a strange, unsettling premonition rising in his chest. He refused to believe, and could barely accept, that this black woman whom he had openly mocked and dismissed as a joke might actually accomplish something useful in this dire moment. Yet, in stark contrast to Rick's skepticism, Colonel Mitchell stood perfectly still, his sharp eyes weighing each of Alicia's subtle gestures. His combat-honed instincts told him that sometimes the key to resolving a crisis lies in actions that defy ordinary logic. Alicia halted before the heavy armory door, the freshly upgraded M-lock system. Without any technical gadget or special tool, she simply placed her right hand on the cold metal and let her fingertips glide across its surface, as though sensing an invisible pulse deep within the mechanism. Nobody spoke. Even Tyler Harris, the one who'd mocked her relentlessly, held his breath. He whispered to the colleague beside him, voice trembling, "What is she, and what is she doing? No tools at all?" No one answered. They were all caught in the suspense of waiting. Even Alicia's most vocal doubters fell silent, hypnotized by her otherworldly calm. Then she began a series of strange, precise movements. Her fingers tapped at specific points on the door in a perfect rhythm, making a soft, echoing code, tap, 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 tap. Each sound seemed like a secret cipher only she could decipher. Rick sneered, trying to reclaim control with a loud bark. "Hey, are you playing us for fools? This is a military base, not a magic show. We don't have time for this nonsense." But his words did nothing to break Alicia's focus. She didn't flinch or glance at Rick. She simply continued her methodical taps, more deliberate than before. Her absolute confidence and concentration ratcheted up the tension for everyone watching. Feeling his authority slip away, Rick took an angry step forward, voice raised. "That's enough. Stop this ridiculous act right now. Don't you see we're all waiting for you to actually do something?" At the very instant Rick finished speaking, a distinct mechanical click sounded from behind the steel door, startling everyone. It was the sound of an internal latch disengaging. A tiny noise, but it shattered the heavy silence. Rick froze, his face draining of color. The fury in his eyes was swiftly replaced by utter confusion, and a flicker of fear he couldn't hide. He had no idea how to respond. Every insult he'd thrown at Alicia now recoiled like a blade in his own chest. Tyler, standing beside him, was equally dumbstruck, his expression raw with disbelief. "No way! How did she do that?" All eyes turned to the massive door as it shuddered to life, its gears whirring back into operation. Then, before anyone could fully process it, the seemingly immovable steel barrier slid open, revealing the armed depot and high-tech equipment ready for the top secret mission. In that breathtaking moment, everyone was motionless, as if witnessing a miracle unfold before their eyes. Colonel Mitchell's brow lifted in stunned respect, and he offered Alicia a silent, all but convinced nod of approval. Meanwhile, Rick stood rooted to the spot, his earlier jibes echoing hollowly in his mind. His mouth opened, but no words came. All his brash confidence and arrogant swagger had evaporated in an instant. Alicia glanced back at Rick, her gaze calm yet powerful. Without another word, her silence spoke volumes. Not only had she opened the armory door, she had exposed the painful truth about his blind prejudice and contempt. The door was open, and it marked only the beginning of far deeper secrets yet to be revealed. The instant the massive steel door swung open, an almost absolute silence swept over the entire base. The moment stretched out as if in slow motion. Everyone froze, eyes wide in disbelief as they stared at Alicia. Rick's eyes were so wide they looked ready to burst, his breathing heavy and his hands trembling uncontrollably. Alicia remained there in her strangely calm state, slowly withdrawing her hand from the cold metal of the door. As she did, a small section of her uniform sleeve rode up, revealing a stark black tattoo on her skin, a coiling cobra rendered in fine, intricate detail. Black Viper. Rick's voice quivered in stunned astonishment. He murmured the name as if he could hardly believe what he'd seen. Black Viper wasn't just a tattoo, it was a top. Secret insignia, a powerful symbol reserved for a legendary covert special ops unit, long hailed as the elite of the U.S. military. This unit handled near impossible missions, staffed by the greatest tech geniuses and most elite warriors, an organization known only in battlefield whispers and in classified documents few ever saw. Rick tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. Every jeer and sneer he'd thrown came back to haunt him with crushing force. The skeptical looks from his fellow airmen only deepened his sense of humiliation. A few paces away, Colonel James Mitchell stood silent, his face shifting from curiosity to shock to a grave, thoughtful expression. His keen gaze seemed to pierce through time, recalling days on the battlefield when the name Black Viper carried legendary weight. He realized the woman he'd dismissed as odd was, in fact, one of the few entrusted with terrifying, formidable secrets. Even he respected on a profound level. Unbelievable, Mitchell whispered to himself, memories of the Black Viper unit flooding back as vividly as if it were yesterday. He remembered how its members were rigorously hand-picked, mostly extraordinary black soldiers, whose talents were often overlooked or scorned by the military's racial biases. A thought shot through him, sending a shiver down his spine. Was it those same prejudices that had driven Alicia here, forcing her to endure Rick's insults and those of his colleagues? A deep shame and regret tightened in his chest. Behind him, Tyler Harris stood pale-faced. All his earlier arrogance and swagger had vanished. He murmured in bewilderment, "Black Viper? I thought that was just a military legend." Rick said nothing. He was speechless, as if his pride and confidence had crumbled like a sandcastle at the tide's edge. For the first time, he looked at Alicia with genuine awe, a profound regret washing over him. While the base remained stunned, Alicia calmly lowered her sleeve, concealing the Black Viper tattoo. Her eyes stayed cool and composed, as if nothing had happened. Yet the silent power she radiated compelled everyone there to bow their heads in respect. Colonel Mitchell, regaining his composure fastest of all, stepped forward, his voice heavy with authority. "Dr. Morgan, I've heard of the Black Viper unit but never expected to meet a member in person. I apologize for what you've endured today." Mitchell's gaze locked on Rick in a wordless admonition, and the sergeant involuntarily bowed his head in shame. Rick felt each of the colonel's words pierce his wounded pride. Alicia offered Mitchell her first hint of warmth and sincerity. "That's all right, sir. I'm used to it. What matters is that the mission can proceed." Mitchell nodded slowly, his tone softening but still firm. I will ensure nothing like this happens again under my command. And everyone here must learn this lesson. Prejudice is not just a mistake. It's a genuine threat to national security. His words rang clearly through the hangar, etching themselves into everyone's memory, especially Rick's and Tyler's. They realized that today's revelation wasn't just about Alicia Morgan's secret identity, but about the prejudices and mistakes they had stubbornly clung to for far too long. Alicia stepped aside quietly, yet her presence felt more immense than ever, an unspoken statement conveyed by the respectful silence and reverent gazes of all who had witnessed her revelation. From that moment on, nothing at the base would ever be the same. The tense atmosphere had barely subsided when Colonel Mitchell turned to his aide, resolve and curiosity etched on his face alongside the gravity of the situation. Captain Reynolds, I want Dr. Alicia Morgan's full personnel file right away. The aide nodded and hurried to the data console, his fingers dancing across the keyboard to pull up the top, secret records. Within seconds, the screen displayed Alicia's dossier, its header stamped in bold red letters. Top secret. Onyx level. A wave of stunned confusion rippled through the base as everyone exchanged alarmed looks. Rick stood frozen, eyes locked on Captain Reynolds' expression as he skimmed the file. A dreadful premonition blossomed in Rick's chest. His heart pounded, and his hand clenched involuntarily. He sensed he was about to face a truth he never wanted to accept. Captain Reynolds slowly turned back to Colonel Mitchell, his voice trembling with respect. Sir, Dr. Alicia Morgan is no ordinary officer. She is the chief engineer who personally designed the entire M-lock security system we're using. Her records were almost entirely scrubbed from our database, except for a handful of highly classified notes. The air snapped into absolute silence. Rick felt as though he'd been struck by lightning, chills coursing through his body. Around him, the airmen began whispering in astonishment. Tyler muttered under his breath, disbelief coloring his tone. No way. She actually designed this system? How did none of us know? Rick had no words. His mind raced with unanswerable questions. The woman he and his teammates had demeaned and mocked from the moment she arrived was, in fact, the very architect of the critical security system safeguarding the base's most vital mission. Colonel Mitchell stepped closer to the screen, reading the scant remaining data with gravity deepening his features. He looked at Alicia with a blend of respect, regret, and genuine empathy. Dr. Morgan, I've heard of you long ago, but I never imagined we'd treat you this way. I am truly sorry. Alicia met his gaze calmly, though a fleeting shadow of pain crossed her eyes. After a moment, she spoke softly. Sir, there's nothing to forgive. This isn't the first time I've experienced this. Her words stunned everyone. A heavy guilt settled over the hangar, especially among Rick, Tyler, and those who had insulted her. Rick felt each syllable press cruelly against his conscience. Mitchell's tone grew gentle yet authoritative. Would you be willing to share, Doctor? Morgan, why you left the military before? Alicia bowed her head slightly, pain flickering in her eyes. Her voice dropped to a hushed, somber register as she recalled a painful memory. I was a member of the Black Viper Special, Ops Unit, an elite group of top experts. But on a critical mission, my commanding officer didn't trust me because of my race. He followed the advice of someone less experienced, but more aligned with the leadership's biases. She paused, locking her gaze on Rick and Tyler, both jolted by shame. Then she continued, her tone edged with cold sorrow. The mission failed as a result. Some of my teammates died, and I was unjustly blamed. I left the service soon after, but I've never stopped supporting my country from behind the scenes whenever it needed me." Her account left everyone reeling. Rick's chest tightened with remorse, his hand trembling as he realized he had repeated that very shameful mistake today, allowing prejudice and arrogance to blind him to true talent, nearly jeopardizing a critical operation. Tyler, beside him, bowed his head silently, unable to meet Alicia's eyes. His earlier jeers now felt like daggers to his own conscience. All that remained was deep regret and respect. Colonel Mitchell surveyed the hangar, his gaze settling on Rick with firm admonishment. "This is a lesson none of us must ever forget. Prejudice and discrimination aren't just personal wrongs. They pose genuine dangers to our security and to the lives of everyone here." Rick lowered his head, swallowing hard at the colonel's words. He finally understood that his pride and his once cherished career were severely tarnished by his own flawed judgment. All the while, Alicia stood calmly, as though prepared for any outcome. In that silence, her quiet strength and the value she brought became clearer than ever, earning the unwavering respect and admiration of everyone at the base. The atmosphere in the base grew oppressively quiet. Alicia's painful history crashed over everyone like a tidal wave, washing away their pride and misplaced prejudices. Colonel Mitchell now stood in the center of the hangar, his gaze sharper than ever, the air around him crackling with tension. He turned slowly to face Sergeant Thompson, his voice icy and uncompromising. "Sergeant Thompson, what just occurred here was not a minor misunderstanding. It was a failure of leadership and personal honor that I will not tolerate." Rick stood motionless, his face flushed with shame and anger at himself. He knew Mitchell was right. Every pair of eyes, once filled with respect and trust, now bore into him with disappointment and doubt. Mitchell stepped closer, his words seeming to freeze the air. A true leader never lets personal bias cloud their judgment. Today, you not only disrespected a talented colleague but nearly sabotaged this base's most critical mission. Do you understand how serious that is? Rick swallowed hard, unable to meet Mitchell's piercing gaze. He bowed his head and, voice trembling, admitted, "Sir, I was wrong. I accept full responsibility." Mitchell nodded, but his scrutiny shifted to the rest of the team, lingering on Airman Harris and the other young airmen. "And you, Airman Harris, did you find it amusing to mock your colleague? Is that how the military trains you?" Tyler's head snapped down, heat flushing his cheeks. Mitchell's words cut to his core. Realizing the gravity of his behavior, Tyler stepped forward, voice soft but clear. "Dr. Morgan, I apologize for my disrespectful words and actions. I was wrong, and there is no excuse." One by one, the other airmen followed suit, bowing their heads in genuine contrition. "We're truly sorry, Dr. Morgan." Alicia watched them calmly. She neither smiled nor scowled. Her demeanor wasn't that of a conquering victor, but of someone who understood her own worth, a deep, unshakable dignity. She addressed the young airman with warmth and quiet authority. "I accept your apologies, but I hope this isn't just a temporary salve for your guilt. Let it be a lasting lesson for all of us." Her words, gentle yet profound, moved everyone to bow their heads once more, recognizing the true power of integrity and forgiveness. Rick stood apart, witnessing the scene. For the first time in his career, he felt painfully small. His long-held prejudices felt like ashes, and his once unbreakable pride lay shattered by a bitter truth. Seeing Rick's transformation, Mitchell stepped forward and placed a firm hand on his shoulder, his tone stern yet compassionate. "Thompson, Sometimes we must confront our greatest mistakes to become better soldiers. You have talent, but you must learn to listen and judge people by their abilities, not by your biases. I hope today will stand as the greatest lesson of your military life." Rick swallowed hard, his throat tight. He looked up and replied, voice wavering but determined, "I understand, sir. I won't let this happen again." Mitchell offered a respectful nod, then turned back to Alicia, his voice softening with gratitude. "Dr. Morgan, thank you again for resolving this crisis. Your contribution not only saved the mission, but forced us to confront issues we've long ignored." Alicia inclined her head slightly, her eyes bright with resolve and dignity. "I'm honored to serve, sir. Prejudice is the most dangerous enemy any organization can face. I believe today marks an important step toward real change." In that moment, Rick looked at Alicia with profound respect mingled with lasting regret. He knew that from this point on, he, and everyone in the base, would carry the lessons of this day forever. The hangar fell into an almost stifling hush. The painful story of Alicia's past had crashed over everyone like a tidal wave, washing away the pride and prejudices they'd clung to. Colonel Mitchell now stood at the center of the bay, his gaze sharper than ever, the air around him crackling with resolve. He turned slowly to face the assembled troops, his voice firm and decisive. "Today, you've witnessed a lesson of incalculable value. No unit, no army, can stand strong if it harbors prejudice and racial bias within its ranks." His words rang through the hangar and lodged themselves in every soldier's heart. Rick stood motionless, eyes fixed on the floor, each of Mitchell's statements landing like blows to his pride, but also awakening in him a deeper understanding he'd never known. Mitchell's voice grew more powerful and clear. "A truly strong military does not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, or background. What matters is each individual's ability, character, and dedication. Prejudice is our greatest enemy. It blinds us to exceptional talent and leads to catastrophic mistakes when stakes are highest." His message turned the hangar into a space of solemn reflection. Every soldier nodded quietly, recognizing that this lesson wasn't only for Rick or Tyler, but for all of them. Rick, once consumed by arrogance, now felt genuine humility and a renewed sense of responsibility as an officer. He lifted his head and looked Colonel Mitchell straight in the eye for the first time, sincere respect in his tone. "I understand, sir. I promise I will never let personal bias compromise my command again." Mitchell nodded with approval, his gaze softening just a fraction as he saw in Rick the makings of a wiser leader. "I believe you will, Thompson, but remember, real change must be shown through actions, not just words." Rick offered a firm nod, feeling a weight lift from his chest after the day's tension and anger. Then he turned to Tyler and the other young airmen, his voice steady and resolute. "As of today, we will treat each other and everyone we meet with absolute respect. I was wrong, and I expect none of you to repeat those mistakes. We must be a truly united team built on ability and character, not on prejudice." Tyler met Rick's gaze, then looked over at Alicia. The shame still burned within him, but he now felt a strong determination to make amends. He nodded and said, "Yes, Sergeant. We understand." From that moment, a clear shift took place in the base. Rick, once an autocratic, arrogant leader, began actively listening to his subordinates, welcoming divergent perspectives he had previously dismissed. He sought out young airmen for constructive, good, faith conversations rather than issuing orders from on high. Tyler, formerly known for his smug sarcasm, became noticeably more thoughtful and earnest. One afternoon, he approached Alicia as she quietly ran her final security checks. "Dr. Morgan, I want to apologize again. What happened taught me a lesson I'll never forget. I hope I can learn from you in the future." Alicia looked up at him, her gaze gentle yet firm as always. "I'm happy to share my knowledge with you, Airman Harris. Mistakes aren't the worst thing. What matters is what we learn from them." Her words brought a relieved smile to Tyler's face. For the first time, he truly felt the power of professional respect and genuine forgiveness. In the days that followed, Alicia continued her work quietly, diligently, and effectively. Her presence gradually transformed her fellow airmen's attitudes. They began to regard her not just with respect, but with deep admiration, recognizing that she possessed not only brilliant skill, but also rare dignity. Rick often watched her from afar, a genuine admiration swelling in his heart, something he'd never believed possible for someone he once dismissed. He realized that from now on, he needed a complete change of heart and mind. Colonel Mitchell, pleased by the clear positive shift, allowed himself a small smile as he observed the young airmen collaborating enthusiastically, free of the biases that once divided them. He knew that his base now boasted not only a state-of-the-art security system, but, more importantly, a foundation of respect and unity, a truly unbeatable strength. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at the base continued to shift noticeably. Yet, amid all the positive changes, one small detail kept Colonel Mitchell unsettled: the mysterious black viper tattoo he'd glimpsed on Alicia's arm. His curiosity finally drove him to seek her out one quiet afternoon. As Alicia was finishing her final security checks, Mitchell approached her silently, his voice low, serious, and, rarely for him, genuinely earnest. "Dr. Morgan, may I have a moment of your time?" Alicia looked up, calm and ready. "Of course, Colonel. How can I help you?" Mitchell hesitated briefly, then asked directly, "The tattoo on your arm, the black viper symbol. I know it's not just ordinary body art. It must have a very special meaning, correct?" For a moment, Alicia's eyes fluttered and her expression grew thoughtful. She paused as if weighing each word carefully. Finally, she spoke quietly, but with profound weight. "Yes, Colonel, this black viper tattoo isn't a casual emblem. It's a reminder, a memory of the elite teammates I once served alongside, and also of the prejudices we endured." Mitchell listened intently as Alicia continued, her eyes reflecting a distant sorrow. "Nearly 10 years ago, I was selected for a top, secret special, ops unit nicknamed Black Viper. The unit was composed entirely of outstanding African-American specialists. We were tasked with the most complex, classified missions the military knew. Yet, even among the ranks that chose us, bias was ever present." Mitchell felt his heart tighten. He remained silent, absorbing the gravity of her story, far more serious than he had imagined. Alicia glanced down at her tattoo, her gaze deepening. "On one critical mission, we uncovered a high-risk terrorist plot against a major military installation. But when we presented our report and countermeasures, senior commanders refused to listen. They thought a unit of black soldiers like us couldn't be trusted with strategic decisions." Her voice weighed heavy with pain that time had not erased. "They dismissed our warning and approved a far less prepared plan, one presented by other officers who fit their prejudiced expectations of military experts. The outcome was disastrous. We lost some of our finest teammates in that failed mission." Mitchell stood silent, Alicia's words striking him with the force of a blow. He keenly felt the years of pain she carried. She pressed on, her voice trembling slightly but filled with resolve. "After the truth came out, instead of accepting responsibility, they blamed us, covering their own failures by accusing the Black Viper unit of incompetence. I couldn't accept that injustice, so I decided to leave the military. Alicia met Mitchell's eyes, not with sorrow now, but with the steely gaze of a warrior. This tattoo reminds me that prejudice can kill teammates and destroy everything we fight to protect. It also reminds me never to let that prejudice win again. Mitchell was struck silent by her powerful words. A deep shame filled him, not just for the military but for himself, as someone who thought he understood fairness and equality. At last, he looked at Alicia with genuine respect and gratitude. Thank you for sharing this with me, Doctor. Morgan, I promise you that from this day forward, I will do everything in my power to eradicate that toxic prejudice from our armed forces. You and your fallen comrades deserve to be remembered and honored always. Alicia inclined her head gently, a small but meaningful smile crossing her lips. I believe we can achieve that, Colonel. I stand ready to support you any time. After that conversation, Mitchell walked out of the hangar with a determination unlike any he'd felt in his long military career. He understood that his mission was no longer just to defend the base or complete operations. It was to build a new culture where prejudice had no place. Rick and Tyler watched from a distance as Mitchell and Alicia spoke, unable to hear every word, but sensing the depth and seriousness of their exchange. Rick bowed his head, a fresh wave of shame and regret washing over him, along with profound respect for the woman he had once dismissed. In the transforming air of the base, Alicia's revelation about the Black Viper tattoo was no longer merely a painful memory. It had become a symbol of the fight against prejudice, a battle they were all now committed to fight and win together. In the days that followed, the base entered a completely new era. Dr. Morgan's story of the Black Viper unit had profoundly moved Colonel Mitchell and had sparked a powerful transformation in Sergeant Rick Thompson's mind. Every word she spoke now served as a vivid reminder he couldn't ignore whenever he stood in command. Inspired, Rick approached Colonel Mitchell with a proposal: regular training sessions on combating racial prejudice and fostering equality within the ranks. Mitchell, his trust in Rick renewed, agreed immediately. Once blinded by arrogance and bias, Rick now addressed the entire garrison with unprecedented sincerity and openness. At the first training session, Rick stood before the large briefing hall, his eyes bright and steady as he looked around at familiar faces. Team, I want to share the story of someone who completely changed my perspective and leadership style, Dr. Alicia Morgan. Her experience shows us that ability knows no color, and it teaches us how dangerous it is when prejudice guides our actions. The soldiers sat rapt, their expressions serious and thoughtful. Tyler, near the front, watched intently, genuine remorse and resolve shining in his eyes. Rick continued, voice charged with emotion and conviction. I made a grave mistake, letting my personal bias hurt a brilliant comrade. That nearly led to catastrophic consequences for our mission. We must understand that in a truly strong unit, only individual skill, character, and commitment matter, never race, gender, or background. Rick recounted Dr. Morgan's story in honest detail, including his own shame. Each heartfelt word, free of arrogance or defensiveness, made clear to the troops how deeply he had changed. By the session's end, Rick received overwhelmingly positive feedback. His soldiers not only respected him more, they believed in him. Rick felt certain he was on the right path, one he would follow to the end. Meanwhile, Tyler was undergoing his own transformation. No longer the young airman known for thoughtless jokes and taunts, he'd become a champion for awareness of racial bias. One afternoon, he overheard a group making inappropriate remarks about a new teammate. Stepping forward, his tone unexpectedly firm, he said, "Hey guys, have we forgotten what we just learned? Prejudice can kill our unity and cripple our fighting power. I've made that mistake before. Trust me, you don't want to live with that shame." Instantly, the group fell silent, struck by Tyler's seriousness and sincerity. They realized these lessons weren't just words. They were lived truths that Tyler had painfully learned. As Tyler became a role model for his peers, Rick continued to promote genuine respect across the base. He regularly visited squad level meetings, listening to each airman's concerns, something he'd never done before. The once autocratic commander had become an open leader, eager to understand and solve problems together. Dr. Morgan remained quietly dedicated to her work, but her presence now carried greater significance. The troops admired her not only for exceptional expertise, but also as a living symbol of the power of forgiveness, dignity, and the resolve to fight prejudice. Occasionally, Rick would catch Dr. Morgan in the control room and, with heartfelt respect, say, "Dr. Morgan, I really want to thank you again. What you did and what you taught us is priceless." She would smile gently and reply, "Sergeant Thompson, what matters most is that you, and everyone here, have recognized the need to change. We can't undo the past, but we can build a better future together." Rick would nod, feeling a deep respect he never thought possible for someone he once looked down upon. He knew that the painful lessons of the past had made him the leader he'd always wanted to be. From then on, Dr. Alicia Morgan's story, and the legacy of the Black Viper unit, lived on not as a tragic memory, but as an enduring lesson in courage, forgiveness, and the true strength of unity beyond all prejudice. In the days that followed, the Air Force Base turned a new page, one in which its working culture was built on a firm foundation of respect, fairness, and judging people by their true abilities. This shift wasn't just evident in the dramatic changes in Rick's and Tyler's attitudes. It rippled through every service member, creating an undercurrent of positive transformation. After completing her final checks, Alicia quietly packed up her things, preparing to depart. She knew her mission here was done, but the real mission had been awakening the consciences of everyone on base. She would leave behind not only a flawlessly reinstated security system, but also a deeply meaningful legacy that would endure. Before she left, Colonel Mitchell convened a special assembly in the base's main hall. Every soldier, from the highest-ranking officers to the newest recruits, stood together. Mitchell mounted the podium, his expression solemn, but his eyes bright with pride and confidence. "Today, we gather to mark a historic moment in this base's story, an event I officially name the Morgan Protocol." He paused, surveying the curious, expectant faces before him. The Morgan Protocol isn't an operational plan, nor is it a technical manual. It's a moral charter, a new code for how we see and value our fellow service members. He turned to look at Alicia, standing quietly at the side, his voice filled with respect. "We named it in honor of Dr. Alicia Morgan, the woman who helped us open not only the armory door but our eyes to a truth we had long forgotten, that talent and character are never determined by skin color or background." Silence held the room for a heartbeat, then the hall erupted in resounding applause. The youngest soldiers clapped the loudest, demonstrating that they truly understood the weight and importance of his words. Rick, in the front row, felt genuine pride glow within him. When Mitchell finished, Rick rose and approached the podium, his voice steady and heartfelt. "We've made mistakes. My mistakes were the gravest of all. But what matters today is that we've recognized them and are changing. The Morgan Protocol will be our foundation going forward." He looked over at Alicia again before continuing with deep sincerity. Dr. Morgan, you've taught us a lesson of immeasurable value. Your legacy will live on here at this base. After the assembly, the very spot where Alicia had placed her hand on the steel door to reactivate the system was formally marked and named Morgan Point. That touchstone became a vivid symbol of true ability, courage, and the resolve to overcome prejudice. The black viper tattoo she bore became a legendary emblem, a reminder to stay vigilant against the perils of bias and discrimination. Rick's training sessions, now built around the Morgan Protocol, became a regular fixture at the base. He reminded his troops that whenever they glimpse Morgan Point, they must recall the day a woman once underestimated reshaped their world. In the days that followed, Tyler matured noticeably. No longer the jokester he once was, he became a mentor to new arrivals, always quick to remind them of prejudice's dangers. Whenever you feel the urge to judge someone by their appearance, remember Dr. Morgan and our past mistakes. Trust me, you never want to live with that regret. Under Tyler's example, the young airmen began treating one another with genuine respect, listening sincerely and collaborating more effectively than ever. The base was no longer divided by blind bias but united by mutual trust. When Alicia finally departed, Rick, Tyler, and the rest of the troops lined the tarmac to see her off. Rick stood before her, gratitude shining in his eyes. Dr. Morgan, we will always remember what you did. The Morgan Protocol will guide us from this day forward. She offered him a calm but powerful smile. Thank you, Sergeant Thompson. I believe you'll do great things. As her vehicle rolled away, the soldiers watched, feeling for the first time that they were part of something far greater, an enduring change they would carry with them for life. From that day on, the Morgan Protocol was adopted across the armed forces nationwide. It wasn't just a new set of guidelines. It was a powerful pledge to eradicate racism and to honor each person's true ability. That was Dr. Alicia Morgan's greatest legacy, a transformation that began at this small base but has since ignited a wave of hope and progress throughout the military and beyond. From the moment Alicia's vehicle rolled out of the base gates, the story of the mysterious woman bearing the Black Viper tattoo and the birth of the Morgan Protocol began to spread like wildfire. What started in one small airbase quickly became a powerful symbol against injustice and racial discrimination. Before long, the Morgan Protocol was being discussed at other military installations and even among senior leadership. Its name appeared in training manuals everywhere as a shining example of courage, the value of diversity, and the power of judging people by their true abilities rather than their appearance or background. Among those who helped tell this story, Rick Thompson emerged as a prominent voice. The same sergeant, once known for his arrogance and bias, now traveled from base to base, standing before hundreds of troops and sharing his own journey with absolute honesty. Soldiers, I used to be the one making the gravest mistakes. I believed strength came from rank and authority, but I was wrong. True strength comes from recognizing human worth, putting aside prejudice and having the courage to change. Rick's words echoed in every lecture hall, prompting deep reflection among young airmen and senior officers alike. Even generals sought him out to learn about his transformation. No longer seen as a rigid commander, Rick had become a respected leader who championed a culture of listening and dialogue wherever he went. Tyler Harris, the young airman once famous for his sarcastic remarks, likewise became a poster child for positive change. He threw himself into anti-racism initiatives, reminding his peers, I used to mock others, thinking my jokes were harmless, but that ignorance almost destroyed a critical mission. If we want to be the best, there's no place for prejudice. Rick and Tyler, once on the wrong side, now stood as fierce defenders of the values Alicia had imparted. They were invited to military academies and national conferences to tell the story of the Morgan Protocol, the Black Viper tattoo, and the special activation spot, Morgan Point, that reminded everyone not to forget the lesson. Across all branches, bases began displaying the Morgan Point symbol in places of honor. More than just a plaque, it served as a daily reminder that dignity and ability transcend race, ethnicity, or gender. Outside the military, Alicia Morgan's story resonated with human rights organizations, the media, and community groups. Conferences on racial equity began citing the Morgan Protocol as a living example of social transformation. Yet Alicia herself remained quietly out of the spotlight. She never sought praise or publicity. Her absence only deepened the myth, making her legacy all the more powerful. Years later, back at the original base, Rick and Tyler stood before Morgan Point during a special commemoration. Rick gazed at the touch point on the steel door and said softly, "You know, Tyler, some people enter our lives very quietly, but their impact is incredible. Dr. Morgan was one of those people." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "Absolutely, Sergeant, this story will live on, here and far beyond." And so it has. The tale of Alicia Morgan, the Morgan Protocol, and Morgan Point continues to be passed down, taught at military schools, leadership seminars, and teamwork workshops nationwide. It has reshaped mindsets and inspired countless individuals to value character above all else. When new recruits at remote bases first glance at the Morgan Point plaque, they inevitably ask where it came from. Veteran airmen reply proudly, "That's the mark of the woman who changed us all," reminding us never to judge anyone by bias or appearance. That's the Morgan Protocol, Doctor. Alicia Morgan's legacy. Dr. Morgan never returned to that base, but every time a soldier looks at Morgan Point or shares her story, they honor a legacy that will never fade. It stands as a legend, teaching us that true strength lies in dignity and unity, and that embracing diversity is not just a duty, but a profound source of excellence. Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar to Dr. Morgan's story? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread this powerful message even further. See you in the next inspiring story.